Welcome to Femme and Furious, a podcast where pop culture meets a feminine framing. I am your host, Julia Rose Portella, and today I have a very special interview with an incredible woman named Lynn Harris. Lynn is a culture-shifting producer, award-winning journalist, and author/co-author of 6 books whose comedy and campaigns for social justice and gender equity have changed laws and conversations from Capitol Hill to NASCAR. She is the founder and CEO of Gold Comedy, the comedy school, professional network, and content studio where women and non-binary creators grow their comedy careers, build powerful communities, and make funny stuff. Harris co-created Breakup Girl, acquired by Oxygen, one of the first multi-platform internet success stories, and served as the first VP of communications at global human rights group Breakthrough, where her blend of humor and advocacy powered some of the team's most effective U.S. campaigns. She has also worked as a Tanya Harding lookalike, which is a long story and one that we don't get into on this podcast, but maybe for another day. I would love to have Lynn back on. She was an incredible person to chat with. I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. Let's jump into the interview. Welcome, Lynn.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, thanks for reaching out. I have followed your journey now through just my computer. And
I hope you brought snacks.
checking up on your work. Yeah, your work is really fascinating, and I thought that's where we would start.
Sure.
Because you sort of introduced yourself to me as like I am all of these things, which I think is such an amazing pinpoint for women who are kind of like taught to be in this box and be this one thing. I am mother, I am daughter, I am sister, right? So I love that you kind of came at it with all of this nuance, but truly, like, you're a journalist, you are an advocate, you are a comedian, you are an author. Like, you have so many different titles, and they're all important and they're all critical. So can you talk a little bit about your professional journey and how it's led you here?
Sure. Well, I've been around for a few decades, so I had time to explore lots of things. So thank you again for having me. I'm happy to answer that. It's kind of like, do you know the game Candyland? It's kind of like, it's a twisty path, and the spaces have different colors, but it's all in the same land of candy, right? And so for me, the land of candy is that is Candyland. By the way, they're not paying me to to mention Candyland.
No free ads.
What I mean by that is that all the things you mentioned and all the stuff that I've sort of gotten up to doing, obviously there's different skills and sort of different industries and different worlds in each one, but there's a lot of overlap. And that is sort of the like, it's all in Candyland, meaning what has always driven me is the power of pop culture, which is really, yes, this is an excuse. This means that, like, staying up late watching TV is work, but what I mean is the power of pop culture, including but not limited to comedy, to drive change. And I don't think it's the only way to drive change, but I like pop culture and I like change. So to be able to mix them is really fun, and it works. So that's where, I early on, I was a journalist for many years. And one of the voice that I had the privilege to develop was really one that, when appropriate, I got to use humor, whether it was sarcasm or just any kind of, punching up, to make a point about, whether it was to, make a salty point about a bad guy or a bad thing, or whether it was a way to provide a delivery system for difficult topics that made them easier for someone to absorb and think about, that less confronting. It doesn't mean watering them down. It just means it's just a delivery system. And the same is true of many types of comedy that can do that, or using comedy tools to introduce people to human rights issues, to inspire people to take action. I did that. And it all and we can go deeper. I'm not the only person who does this or knows that it works by any stretch, but that's what inspires me the most. And so that there are a whole bunch of other, squares on the board between then and now, but where that has led me to found Gold Comedy, which is the comedy school and professional network and content studio where women and non-binary creators and others uh build their comedy careers and creative side hustles and join a powerful community and make funny stuff that gets seen on all kinds of stages and screens. Now, is each of them doing something political? No, not necessarily. Or are they creating political content? Not at all. I mean, maybe, but not necessarily. The
Sure.
idea is that comedy matters because it's certainly, yes, a distraction, but it's also a cultural force. So it matters who makes it because
Yeah.
the content and the creators help shape perceptions, ideas, your image of who has power, who you listen to. So it matters that inclusivity matters in any industry. Obviously, you get a better product. And it also matters in terms of who's sending the messages and who do we learn to listen to?
Yeah.
And so that's what led me to just help. Comedy's hard for everyone. It is, and it still is for everyone, but it led me to want to try to give a boost to the people for whom it's still the hardest. And which helps them individually, and that's a win. But then in the aggregate, if we can widen the funnel and enable more, be part of creating more inclusivity in comedy, then yeah, we make the world a funnier place, but we also help change perceptions of, we kind of help. Comedy's power, so we kind of help change the face of power. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, so there's a lot to touch on. So you're speaking right to
Mhm.
the soul of what this podcast is about, which is why I'm glad you reached out to me
Yeah, yeah.
because my trade by nature is astrology, which is this like heavy tool. It's fun because it's pop cultural and there's a lot of it in the media and horoscopes and whatever. But when you really get down to the nitty-gritty of like what astrology is, it's pretty deep. And which is why I love it. I love it for that reason. But then I worked at high-end wellness resorts and I had to teach multiple times a day. And you're taking these really deep, metaphysical, sometimes ancient topics, and you're trying to break them down to people. And I would be like, I don't really know how to explain this tarot card to you. It's like thousands of years old, but like, have you ever seen How to Train Your Dragon? And that would
Right.
allow me to bridge the gap with people. And I really started pulling pop culture in because that was like intuitively how I was pulling it in. And when I had the idea for this podcast, I was like, I've got to get it out of my head that these are separate things because to me, like creating this podcast was a way to connect with people about deep and nuanced topics because pop culture is a reflection of everything that's going on.
Right.
And I focus specifically on women because I think Harry Styles said it best. And I know that that's very funny, but Harry Styles has this
No,
quote
not at all. That makes sense.
from this Rolling Stone interview that he did when he first put out his first solo album. And he said, like embraces One Direction in this interview. They're
Mhm.
like, aren't you so happy you're making serious music? And he's like, One Direction was serious music. Like we did what
Yeah.
the Beatles did, And
Huh.
I just thought it was so amazing. He was like, young girls define pop culture and what's popular. And that always stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, I want to do like a podcast about these like canonically masculine things or just stories that get like brushed over, like romance because women like
Exactly.
them.
Yes.
So I came into it with mind, when I put out this pilot episode, I had in mind, a period of time politically where women and non-binary folks and queer folks were being attacked and the relevance of these stories during this period. And so, comedy not being the specific focus, but also the funniest people I know are women. So I think there's like this beautiful layer to it. And I think that you're exactly right that these, topics that can be so heavy for people, especially right now, politically, globally, can almost be a spoonful of medicine without losing the nuance or the continuity of what it is that we're trying to get the point across about. And a lot of this stuff gets, especially on social media, can get misconstrued, but I don't know. I just went to go see a comedy show locally with my mom, and so we saw Eric D'Alessandro. Do you know him?
I don't. I should,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
guess.
he's like a TikTok guy, but he's funny.
Yeah.
He was talking about how he had a hard time as a new father connecting with his son. Of course, he's doing it through comedy, so it's funny and you're laughing. And um, but when we got into the car, I was like, it's actually a pretty profound
Yeah.
thing to be
Yeah.
talking about. And so I think comedy really does reach people in this way because we like to be connected together in laughing at something, and it's funny and it's something to talk about, but there's this other layer to it where you can really bring some of these heavier topics and nuanced topics into it. And so I love that your journey of Candyland has sort of led you to gold comedy, because this space that exists for women and for non-binary and others to be able to fill in a gap that is, I don't know, because I'm not really too deep into the comedy world other than I'm going to put on a special and I'm going to laugh at it. I think that you're filling a gap that is providing a service that probably goes so much deeper than just bringing some levity to a situation, but to bring some real that's just how I keep hearing it, like intuitively. It's like a spoonful of medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know what? How does that shape the philosophy of what you're doing there?
I will answer that and then remind me to go back to something else you said
Okay.
about with just say Harry Styles and I'll remember.
Okay.
That's the magic word. Isn't it always? So yeah, here's the thing. Let's use stand up as an example. When I talk about comedy, I mean stand up, I mean sketch. I mean, you know, uh people who develop characters on TikTok. I mean improv. I mean
Yeah.
even like writing funny copy for brands, doing, brand social media, that kind of thing. It's all everything. Or it means even not being a performer. It might mean being a producer, showrunner, late night writer, might mean being a gearhead and just doing, being a director of photography, but on comedy sets or on digital sketches, all that stuff. So I don't want to limit it to stand up, but just use stand up as an example and why it matters. Um, you had that experience. You related to Eric D'Alessandro. That's his name. Yeah. You related to him. Like you're not a dude or a father, right? But there was something about what he said that was relatable.
Yes.
And that's because and this is true of storytelling also, or comic storytelling or otherwise, that the more specific you are, this is sort of a paradox, the more specific you are, the more relatable your content is, because it's so vivid that enables people to find the primal theme underneath it, because you paint a picture so vivid that you're like, you don't say this, you don't say this explicitly, but you're like, he's talking about human connection, or he's talking about, primal fear of abandonment. Like, I don't know, but it becomes relatable in the details, which is kind of weird. Right. So, but that's why, that is really, that's my take. That's my hot take on why, but then imagine that it's the other way around, and you're, a cis straight dude watching a woman talk about whatever, watching a trans person talk about whatever. And they might not even be talking, let's to pursue that example, they might not even be talking about being trans, right? They might, who knows? But they, chances are they're probably talking a little bit about it and then moving on. But let's say they're talking about their weird family, or whatever it is, or like dating is hard, all the topics. You as that so now imagine the impact that person has on the straight white dude who even through no fault of his own may not have sat and listened to a trans person of color talk for 10 minutes at all about anything. Much less they're going to be completely able to talk about something relatable, even if they're talking about being trans. Just the way him talking about being a dad was completely relatable for you, even though you're not a dad.
Yeah.
And so
I'm not even a
like,
parent.
not even a parent. So like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And then, so, and then but again, it doesn't even matter what the person is talking about when you have the experience of like, the social contract is that you're going to listen to that person without interrupting for like 8 minutes or more. And so that's a pretty powerful experience. And that's just stand up. So that's why it really has to do with it has to do with both what the person is saying and that the person is talking.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that
So,
so much.
yeah.
You gave me chills multiple times during that. I'm
Chills.
like, make a note because so one of my this is like a sidebar and then we'll go to Harry Styles. But one of my goals this year is, I studied theater, like traditional theater. So yes and is like a part of my
Sure.
your training. But that's my like college background. And then I sort of like moved on from it and did other stuff. But it was my whole life for many, many years. And one of the things that I feel that I've lost like outside of academia is a media literacy outside of my own intrigue about something. And I think pretty deeply about stuff, but I was like, I really want to like take some courses and like understand cinematography and understand more about comedy and the beats and things. Like I'm aware of them, but I'm not thinking about them critically like I would like to be for this podcast. So I've been reading a lot of books on all of this stuff because I love to read. And I think you're just touching on so many things that are so profound about why we enjoy different art forms.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, comedy, or in particular, anything that relates to storytelling, because this is exactly what it is. It's boiling down the human experience into something that is relatable. And I think you just touched on like, yeah, this is why I love this. It's just like so, and it's why I love watching it. It's why I love digesting it. It's why I wanted to go see this comedy show. We've seen this show. I took my mom to see him a couple months ago. I bought it for her for Christmas last year and we went over the summer and we just saw it again. So we saw the same sketch twice. And I was like, it was better the second time. It was funnier. He like worked some stuff out. So it's amazing to see what, even can get, you're feeding off of an audience or you're feeding
Totally.
off of a live person, which that I understand from my theater background. But yeah, you just gave me chills multiple times. I can't wait to listen to that back and be like, take some notes there. Okay, so
Excellent.
Harry Styles.
Excellent. Harry Styles. I love that. I love what he said. And I relate to what you were talking about because another thing another thing I did that was in the 90s and then now again. Well, let me back up. Let me put it this way. It is like absolutely enraged me for so long that certain like whether it's pop culture or pop music or like so-called chick flicks or so-called chick lit or whatever is considered lesser, is considered fluff, whatever it is, makes me insane.
Me too.
And it is just it's straight up sexism. It's straight up because it's like what everything dudes do is deep, like what.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's fine. It's fine if it's not. Like, I'm not saying it should be. Like, but what are we talking about? And so, so I'll take you back to the okay, I'll take you back to the 90s, and I'm gonna say something audacious, which is okay. I've never seen Sex in the City.
Okay, great.
Here's
Me
why.
neither.
Okay, here's why. But this was crazy in the 90s because everyone watched Sex in the City, and I have zero things against Sex in the City, but here's why it became like this axe that I was grinding. So my creative partner and I co-created there's a longer story than this, but co-created a superhero character named Breakup Girl, who helped first. Initially, she was part of a book we were working on together that was a humorous guide to surviving a breakup. And then, like, we were like, we're onto something, because the superhero, I mean, we have superheroes who can bend steel bars, but, like, how about one who can mend broken hearts? And the way we conceived her from the beginning, and Chris, my partner, brought in, like, sort of the classic, comic book / animation background, and classic sort of superhero stories, like very Marvel type vibes. And uh eventually the character evolved, and we didn't set out to do this, but the way that, well, she became in the late 90s, like, the first multi-platform internet success story. Like, pretty much, because we had a website, which no one had. We had a TV show on it. We were acquired by Oxygen. We had a live show. We had books. It was a giant thing, cult following, whole thing. And what we realized we were doing was trying to, like, using this character to change the way people talk about relationships, because at the time, it wasn't that long ago, but at the time, it was very rigid. The idea that there were women's magazines, first of all, and and any conversation anywhere, live or on paper, about relationships, which are of course between a man and a woman, um, it was like that was for women to talk about. And I don't know, men were half of the relationship, even in the binary, so I don't know where they were. But in any case, what we noticed, why we realized we didn't set out to do that, why we realized we were doing that, is that we we definitely conceived the character from the beginning to be someone who talked to anyone. She was not, the idea was like, we were like, ugh, she's not going to just talk to women. That's stupid. That doesn't help anybody, right? So we created her as, as we joked, like a co-ed superhero. And it worked. The people who wrote to us, we had a major, huge advice column, and the people who wrote to us from the jump were women, men, queer. Before we had terms for this, like we like, quote unquote, cross dressers, like,
Sure,
that's what we call them, and like all the people. And we were the only place where where people who weren't a girl could, like, go gab about relationships and get relationships advice, because they didn't have any, I mean, like, so that's one thing. And that was the idea of, like, that's on our theme of, using pop culture tools and products to start new conversations and change the way, people talk and think. But the other thing that made me insane was, people would say to me, "What do you do?" And I would say, "Well, I'm executive producer at Oxygen of a character that I co-created, named Breakup Girl, who helps men and women with romantic emergencies." Let's say I said that, and they would say, "Oh, is that like Sex and the City?" I'd be like, nothing I said nothing I said was anything like Sex and the City, except that there are." I mean, nothing. I guess maybe advice call. I don't.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
what it showed me was that there weren't enough pop culture items with women as the main character at all, because the only other one they could think of was Sex and the City. So that's where their brain went. And it's not like we didn't have Golden Girls. Of course we had, like, there weren't like zero women, but I'm just saying they had no reference to, like, and so I deliberately, at that point, that's why it's nothing against Sex and the City, I happened to have not watched it at that point, and I was like, I'm not going to, because then I can prove to them that it may be like Sex and the City. I don't know, but I certainly didn't try, because, and, like, it was very weird. And there was just this idea that anything that women did was girly and for women and different. And our point was, well, given that our president just had an affair with a female intern that almost brought down the world as we know it, we kind of think that relationships aren't fluff.
Yeah. Shout out to
So,
Monica.
yeah, exactly. We love her. Yeah, of course. But
Love Monica.
she's
So
the best.
much.
I'm sure you follow her on socials and stuff
I
like that. She's
do.
great. Yeah, she's great. So,
So that's amazing.
Mhm.
I mean, talk about one of the boxes on your board,
I know. Yeah.
Breakup Girl. That's so amazing.
Yeah.
And again, like, genre meshing, because if you
Right.
think about superheroes, you think about men. And that's one of the things, I mean, hopefully we don't think that anymore, especially I think Marvel, I forget exactly what the numbers is, but like Captain Marvel, which is their, woman superhero,
Yeah.
one of few in the Marvel universe, like was the first, like, I think $1 billion or like $1 million,
Yep.
whatever the stat was at that time. So like a pretty popular movie that they weren't expecting to be that big of a hit.
Right. Which is great.
And yeah,
I took my kids and I was like, "See guys," yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing when you think about going back to the 90s where you're creating this character in this comic style, with the comic background, and doing that genre blending, cuz it also, you know, because everything is so segregated with men and women, it makes it almost more palatable for men.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Right.
or at least back then, I'm these are still bridges to cross. And I think comedy is actually a really great way to cross them, but
For
um
sure. For sure.
but just so amazing that you've like did this thing. I can't wait to look her up.
Oh yeah, we had a hiatus, which is a story for another podcast about the .com bust, best told over drinks. But we have the carrot. We got the rights back, and we've been cooking up some other stuff over the years, and we'll see what's next. Something will be next, but yeah, you can find her at breakupgirl.net.
Okay, I love that. I'll be looking her up. I'll tag that too for anyone listening. I'll tag
Sure,
that in our
sure,
notes.
sure.
So, you've said comedy is power. When you make people laugh, you make people listen. And I think this is so impactful as a quote. Can you just unpack that? I mean, we've started to kind of talk
Yeah.
about it, but, what does this really mean for you as far as amplifying voices, especially for women or non-binary folks or people who don't fit into the gender, constrictions in any capacity?
It's I mean, we talked about why it matters. We talked about that moment of kind of literally listening, that you literally have to be quiet and listen when when you go to see stand up, and to use stand up as an example. But there's also something even a little more cosmic, that the idea of I mean, I think it in this way it kind of translates across industries, but like just the experience of seeing of normalizing or us because our efforts to normalize women in comedy, whether they're seen or not, whether they're present on the stage or whether they're powerful, behind the scenes, just normalizing that normalizes women in power anywhere, first of all. And then going back to comedy as a delivery system that makes people not defensive, that kind of opens up their lizard brains to and to sort of just receive. And another example would be when I worked for several years at a human rights organization called Breakthrough, that it shifted what it does now, but at the time in the US, um we created pop culture campaigns. They still do this in India. That was through sort of sister organizations or fraternal twin organizations, whatever. Um, we created pop culture products and campaigns that help people understand human rights issues as real and relevant and actionable, including in the US, where we typically think about civil rights, which we should, but we don't typically frame immigration issue. Now more and more we do, but this was the early 2000s. um, Immigration issues, especially post 9/11, um, gender-based violence, human rights issue. We don't think of it that way, but it is. And so we created things like animations that showed that wound up showing at places like NASCAR races, the Indy 500, the jumbotron outside Notre Dame at Lambeau Field. Like that's huge. That's millions of eyeballs and very dude spaces. We created animations that encouraged men to understand that they were part of that they had the power to challenge violence against women. It was we termed it was pretty binary at the time, but that made sense at the time. And what we used humor. We used kind of edgy looking animation. We used it was jokey. It wasn't very hard to get. It was easy. It went down easy because you're at a game, you're
Yeah.
tailgating. You're like, it can't be. And so think about that. Like, when else and where else are like perfectly nice regular dudes gonna be presented at all with a message that's you have the power and responsibility to challenge violence against women. When are they going to hear that in a way that's not scoldy, lecture-y? And where are you going to where are you going to find them? What you're going to get them to go to a seminar in college? I mean, I don't, and are you going to get them to go to like a training? Like some of
Yeah.
them, yes, but like not that many at one time. And so showing like an edgy kind of funny animation that encouraged it, like kind of like reminded dudes in a funny way that it's kind of not really women's job to stop violence against women. It's kind of on you. But like that's not a message that goes over real well. Like and like understandably, like you don't want
Sure.
to be told, you don't want to be lectured about that, especially if you consider yourself nonviolent, right? You don't want to be told that you're part of the problem. But, but this delivery system, was kind of like enough to make, the idea is like make a few guys go, "Hmm," and so that's another way. If you make people laugh, you make people listen, like, "Oh, that's oh." So, and we also did a series of comedy shows that I created called, Dudes Against Violence Against Women because duh. And even the title, because duh, is like, who
Yes.
like, what we know women are against violence against women, but, like, also, like, why would you like, because duh just was a funny way, sort of a, like, sassy way of saying, like, "You guys, you are against this, right?" Like, and so we joked that it was, like, finally a comedy show that's all men on purpose.
I love that.
And which is also funny,
Yeah.
and so, and we raised a ton of money, and then we got millions of eyeballs on social because these dudes were like, "Yeah, I'll do that show, and I'll promote this out, and I'll be like, dudes, this is our problem. Let's do something." But it was comedy, and it wasn't making fun of violence against women.
Yeah.
It was making fun of like the idea that we don't actually involve dudes in the conversation, and making fun of like the culture that enables it's like all the stuff around, like
Yeah.
the problem isn't funny, but the stuff around it kind of is because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's long way of saying that's another way of talking about another way of describing when you make people laugh, you make people listen.
Yeah, I definitely think there's something in I would say, although you've been making me laugh this whole podcast, but I would say I find myself to be the funny girl in like my zone of friends and group and stuff like that, in my family and stuff. And I think about that all the time and I'm like, but the jokes come from a place of like, did you really hear that? Do you need me to say that again? Should I punch that up for you again? Because there really is something about these topics. And I find that the best comedy is the comedy that makes you think about something. And I think the worst comedy is comedy at somebody's expense or at the expense of a thing. Because I don't find that stuff funny. And then I am curious, like, do you guys get so would you say that like a majority of the audience that you guys are targeting, although I'm sure that there's like multiple different creators that you have that are targeting kind of different people, but would you say that the idea is to get these types of conversations out to men, or it's just different conversations so they're reaching different people?
It's just flood the zone. It's
Okay.
that was at Breakthrough, where we wanted people to feel included rather than implicated, and that was about the content. Whereas now it's about who's doing it, who, and like flood the zone, make just help more people, like you and me get into comedy, help more people who are already in comedy succeed, help the people who are sick of the bro vibe, which persists. We could talk about that. Help them not quit. at least help them not quit, or help them, just not give up and get frustrated. And get their stuff out there. We're very focused on stuff, not just skills, but stuff. Like, actually make things. That's the only You can build skills all day long, but if you're not making things, I mean, that's fine. If that's your goal, to build skills, that's totally
Sure.
fine. But um that's, no, that's not a criticism. I'm just saying, like, we're focused on, okay, what are you going to make, and what are you going to put out there that other people will see, and how can we help you?
I love
And it
that.
doesn't really matter what the thing is. It doesn't. I mean, it winds up. I mean, it winds up being political because a lady made it. But they don't have to be. It can be the goofiest thing in the world. But as long as again, it just goes back to who makes it matters.
Yeah. So let's touch a little bit on that bro culture, because
Oh.
the reason why I'm sure a lot of this stuff feels political is because I think we are at such a cultural crux in a way that it feels so divided in so many different ways. And it's, I've started to notice this myself, especially when the article, is it embarrassing to have a boyfriend? Did you read the article? Okay. If
No,
you
but I
didn't, you
get
heard of
it
it. Yeah.
immediately. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So this like took the internet by storm, and I could tell
Yeah,
that a
yeah,
lot of people did not read the article because the
yeah,
article was done in
yeah,
research with women who are in relationships.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then it was this big
I remember this now. Yeah, yeah.
pushback. Yeah. This big pushback of like, these are single bitter women. And it's like, actually, everyone that was interviewed for this article was married or in a committed relationship.
Yep.
And that's like the funniness of like what, you know, gets amplified sort of online. But, so I think that we're not even just in this like, like, at least domestically speaking, because it's global, it's happening everywhere. But like, it's not even just like a political like this party versus this party type of thing. It really does feel like there is this crux between masculinity and femininity. And in femininity, I'm throwing in our LGBTQ folks, because that's sort of how it feels on this
Well, because
balance.
anything other than traditional masculinity is the other side. I mean,
Yes.
I'm not saying it really is. I'm just saying that's the perception.
Yeah, that's like how it's being sort of categorized. Like the she's, the gays, and the theys are like over here, and then there's
Yep.
like men, cis men over there.
Trad men. Let's
Yeah,
call them
yes,
trad men.
yes, that's
Yeah.
a better word.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there's a reason, that because of that divide right now, that it does feel quite political, because the things that are relevant to talk about, which is where comedy or pop culture is being influenced by our life imitates art, right? So or art imitates life, whatever way you want to go about it. Write what you know. We get this advice all the time to like pull from our daily experiences. And this is just our daily life right now. Whether you're
Yep.
like deep, you're on the front line, you are, in a full zone of activism or not, you just are living in this tension on a day-to-day
Yes.
basis. So how could you not be talking about it? Because it's what we're all
Right.
experiencing.
Or if
So
you're talking at all, you're part of
yeah,
it. I
exactly.
mean,
So
they're still not that psyched about women talking.
well, when you've got so many men with microphones.
Right. And
Just so many.
certain women are allowed to talk,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. They have to have a certain look or a certain, whatever it is. But, the rest of us are, you know,
Well, I think this is great. So, like, have you seen any particular breakthroughs around, like, either, like, cross-mingling with this bro culture, or having somebody share a breakthrough with you, or some sort of paradigm shift, or...
I mean, I think one thing to mention is actually dudes, cis dudes join Gold because they're also like, please get me out of there,
Okay.
so that's a thing. Um, uh, and I think the breakthroughs are a little more subtle, but they're there. I think that we have women who join us and really create second careers or third careers or massive creative side hustles, or write a pilot that even though they don't give up their day job, write a pilot that gets picked up, or that's in development or whatever that happens. And a lot, like, for a woman, we have plenty of people in their 20s and 30s, but then we have people in their, women in their 40s and 50s who are doing this for the first time, and are very serious about it. It's not just like, I've always wanted to try it, but I shouldn't make fun because that's also fine. But like,
Sure.
um, but which great, please do. But women who like really have been like, Gen X women, even though we're like, I guess we're kind of relatively cool. We're not like our moms, but I mean, I'm not saying our moms weren't cool. I'm saying it was a different generation. It was a little more feminist than our mom's generation, but like there's a lot of women my age who grew up in the 70s and were not encouraged. Like I wasn't discouraged from being funny, but I was also encouraged by the world to sit nicely with my hands folded, and to not be too much. Like whether we were told to be quiet, maybe less, but there was a whole thing about being too much that a lot of us grew up with. And so I think that the breakthroughs are not like overt or like specific or documentable, but there's a whole cohort of Gen X women at Gold who are like finally like out of fucks, and realize the ways that they were, even if they were raised feminist, even if they were raised in a feminist household, all that stuff, even if they went to a cool hippie school, like whatever it is, who realize all the ways that they kept some stuff to a whisper and are finally like, I'm doing the pilot, I'm doing the thing, like whatever it is, I'm doing it. Uh, so I think it's more like that, or that's what I see constantly and consistently, and yeah,
I love
that
it. Okay, great. Listen, my mom is Gen X. I'm a millennial. My sisters are Gen Z. So, we have like kind of all generations in
whole
my
you have a
household.
whole yeah.
And I notice this too. I notice it more with millennials because I work a lot with millennials. Like that's usually like my number one client base, but I work with people of all ages. And I've noticed that too, that there's a lot of career pivots around creativity
Yeah.
that are happening right now for millennials. I think they're just like, we were sold this dream and we're not digging it. It's like
Yep.
not working for us and we're not fulfilled. And it's like, yeah, well, what did you do that made you feel good? And I even just had this conversation with my sister who, when she was much younger, she's 17, she's looking at colleges. I'm wearing San Diego
Yay.
State because she's manifesting getting into the school today.
Yay. Oh, today? Oh my God, today? Ah!
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, this is my household. My kid is 17, and also like
okay.
there are dates, things are happening. We're
Yeah.
waiting. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like a big period of time. That's why I'm wearing this. Otherwise I'd be wearing something else. But my whole
Yeah.
family was wearing
No,
our
I love it. I
sweatshirts.
love it. Oh my God.
And,
I'm so
we were
excited.
talking and I'm like, she's like, when I was younger, I made these YouTube videos and she did, and she was really good at them. And they were private. They were just like for our family. But she was really good at it. And she was like, I was so happy doing that, and I don't do that anymore. And I was like,
Mm.
you should. She spent so much time writing, editing, producing. Like, she did it all herself, and she was a kid, so whatever. But I felt the same way where I'm like, all I listen to is podcasts. Why wouldn't I start a podcast? Why
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't it be about the things that I like want to be online talking about? And I think that women are starting to have this like awakening of their creative spirit, whether it is writing or it's cooking or it's comedy or whatever. I just think that there is like something happening right now with this, especially I see it a lot for millennial women because that's who I
Mm-hmm.
work with the most. But I
Yeah.
love that you say Gen X too, who are just like out of fucks and they're like, you want to know what? Like, it's now or it's never. Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
do the thing or I'm not going to do the thing. And
Right.
I think that is
Right.
such an incredible breakthrough because it's not necessarily, I always say, like, leaders go first. And,
Uh-huh.
it's hard. It's really, really hard, especially when you're the first one, whether that's in your family, whether that's in your friend group, whether that's in your, whatever, extended circle, your career pivot. Like, you're the one that's taking the leap to show other people that it's possible. And I love that Gold Comedy is focusing not necessarily on the skills, but on the product and being like, the skill is one thing that can be refined over time. That's like a palatable thing that you can keep going and keep doing and keep building your knowledge, but to actually have a pilot that can go and get picked up. Okay, but that's where something changes because now it's just one more person in a room. Now it's just one more thing that's out there. And so I love that there's this focus. I think those are incredible breakthroughs. And I think that is how it shifts. I mean, I think we need these types of works out in the world. And I love that. So if you were giving advice to somebody who was jumping in for the first time, maybe they've been interested, maybe they think they're funny, maybe they don't. But maybe they're interested in discovering what their voice could be in this path. What would you recommend? What is your advice? Your sage advice?
Right. Well, here's some inspiration. Like you just made me think of someone who I'll use her as an illustration. Um and then I'll get to the advice, which is and the illustration proves you can do it. And that is we have a member named Rocky who is in her 50s. She's a grandmother. She takes care of her grandchildren. She has an adult son with extra needs that she is in charge of, and she's a retired high school art teacher. She and this is a breakthrough that you were asking about. She came to us couple years ago saying like, I know I'm funny, but I don't know how to funny. Like, I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to write a joke. What do I get? What? And so she jumped in with us and she holds the record for taking our stand-up boot camp class 10 times. Um, because, and that's how it works. Once you're a member, you can take as many classes as you want, as many times as you want. And, in other words, she worked her butt off. And she lives in North Carolina, and I finally met her in in September, because she came to New York City to do her first solo show, do her first full half hour of stand up in a solo show called Unapologetically Rocky. And okay, so my point is,
Go Rocky.
go Rocky. She's the best. So my point is, jump in. You don't have to change who you are. You don't have to even think you're funny like Rocky did. I mean, you're doing it for some. I mean, you kind of think you're funny if you're curious about getting into it. Maybe you don't though. Maybe you just think you just can sort of smell funny. I don't mean smell funny. I mean smell funny.
I gotcha.
And maybe you want to learn how to be a producer. Maybe you want to learn how to just do the lighting. All you want to do is like, maybe, that's your thing, and you want to know how to make sketches look great. Digital sketches look great. You don't have to change who you are. You already are enough. You don't have to be more confident. You don't have to be less shy. You don't have to be more loud. Like, whatever it is. Like, you already have the thing. Like Eric, well, he had it. He had the material.
Yeah.
He didn't have to, become a different person to do comedy. He just had to lean into who he already was. So that's the answer. What makes you yourself is already what makes you funny. And so then, like Rocky, all you have to do is put in the reps.
I love that. I think that's great. I can't wait. Now I'm like, okay, how do I join? How do I sign up?
Well, yeah, I mean, I really, of course, invite you to. We have a cool thing. Well, we have lots of cool things, but in any case, I'll make this more evergreen. You can go visit goldcomedy.com. You can follow us on Instagram at goldcomedy. And yeah, the cool thing is that one of the things that makes us different is that it's an annual subscription as opposed to a class by class thing. 'Cause some exceptions with our premium classes, but basically the idea is that you join. You're a member, you're a Goldie. You're in. You have your crew, you have your community. And also there are tons of classes that you can take as many times as you want. They're all included. They're at no extra charge. You just take classes. And we have open mics. We have with nice feedback. We have weekly conversations with celebrities and pros. We have all these things just going on, and the community is always there 24/7. So you get to know people. This is your crew. These are people who want you to succeed. There is no bro vibe. And if you start to make something, these are the people who come to your show. These are the people, if you need to like crew up, these are the people. You've got your DPs and lights and sound people in the community. You've got your PAs in the community. And then you've got your people who will share about you on social and support your work out in the world. So it's the whole package.
I love it so much. Are you located are you located all of
I should have said
yeah.
that. We're online. We're mostly online.
Okay.
We're launching some we've definitely done shows and classes, brick and mortar, IRL, but we're gonna do more of that next year and in 2026. And but yeah, you can be wherever you are, we're there
Okay,
because it's
cool.
mostly online. Yeah, all the classes are on Zoom. It's all that was even part of the vision even before the pandemic, just to you don't have to live in a comedy city to be a comedian or to be part of the comedy world.
I love that so much. So here's my last question for you, and then anything else that you would like to touch on, because I could talk to you all day, and I'd love to have you back on. You have a free pass to come on literally
Well,
whenever
thank
you'd
you.
like.
Thank you.
Because I also another sidebar, but I really wanted to read your book, um, and I bought it, and I haven't been able
Thank
to
you.
read it because I moved to Paris, and then I came home for the holidays. It was
Right, I
just like
remember.
the craziest like
Incredible. Yeah,
compaction of time. And so I have not been living in like reality. I've just finally been
it's
getting my
fine.
schedule. So I'd love to have you back on for your book too.
Okay, sure.
But
Thank
I'll
you.
get in touch with you. So where do you see the landscape of comedy changing, particularly for women or for non-binary or the other
Yeah.
folks,
Yep.
in the next like 5 years?
The news is good.
Okay, great.
I'll start with the bad news. The bad news is like not enough has changed. I mean, it is ridiculous. The bullshit that we still have to deal with is the stuff that I was dealing with in the 90s still happens. Oh, I'm the only woman on the lineup. Guess it's diverse now. Like I can't even. Um the the fact that they still call women comics tells you everything, right? Like, could we just please be comics? Because it reinforces the idea that men are normal comics and we're the others,
Yeah.
right? We're the auxiliary. A lot needs to change, a lot. um at the same time, uh it's a combination of the world getting a little more enlightened, but also like the demand. There is demand for people still love you know, white dude comics, which is fine. They're, that's fine, but and many of them are wonderful, but there's demand for different kinds of comics. There just is. And so thank goodness the industry is working to meet it and has. And also, even before the pandemic, uh the gates are being lowered. Like the gatekeeping is less. You it don't bank on that you can be an overnight success with one great tweet. It still takes, 10 years to be an overnight success, but the avenues, there are so many more on-ramps. There are so many more ways to be found, seen. You still have to do the work without getting paid. You're still like, it's not awesome. But but there is more opportunity. There are more on-ramps that when you're doing the work and building your brand without getting paid, there is more there's just more opportunity for visibility, and to parlay your unpaid work into something more. Um, that is great. And because that also matches demand. It's not just because people are doing the right thing, like we should be more inclusive because that is good. No, it is also because people want it. So yeah, we are living in a world with more opportunity. It is still hard. But there is the stuff that people are putting out and the demand for different stories and different faces and different voices is real. So it all goes back to you have to make stuff. Build skills all day long, that is fine, but making stuff is what you need to do. But the nice thing is when you do, there is an opportunity for it to get seen and loved. And maybe even elevated to a wider audience. There really is.
I love that. Okay, one last question. I'm sorry. As you were saying that, I wanted to ask, is there anything that people listening, myself included, that they can look out for from either Gold Comedy or from you or from any of your comics? Or, is there anything
Yeah.
coming up?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. Well, one thing I would encourage you folks to do is look for the web series Rat Czar. which is a came out of one of our classes, and actually, it's a full web series that was produced by Majority Goldie production. That's happening now, and it's winning awards all over the place. So you can, if you watch it now, you can say you saw it when. And then next year we're really going to look to, again, making stuff. So we're going to be really creating opportunities for people to make more web series like that, which is now fancily called mid-form content.
Okay.
Um, and also uh, we're gonna create more opportunities for people's pitches to be heard by people who can help stuff get made. So, but don't let that intimidate you. If that sounds fancy and you've never done comedy before or anything like it, we will still welcome you, and we can. A lot of people come like, I just wanted to try it out, and like, oops, they wrote a pilot. So like that happens, and we make it easy. We are just here for your success.
I love it so much. All right. Thank you so much, Lynn. You have been so incredible. You're so funny. You're so insightful.
Thank you.
And I like I said, you have a pass to come on anytime. If you're like, hey, I want to yap about this
Thank you.
thing, come on. And
Thank you.
I can't wait to point people in your direction and really get them hooked up with you, because I think a lot of people need this. I think a lot of people need this as their own form of therapy. It's just like to get it out there. And I think
Yep,
it can be really soothing and really helpful for a lot of people. So thank you so much for
for
sharing
sure.
everything.
You're
I
welcome.
know this is going to be incredible, and I can't wait to see what comes out of Gold Comedy. I really can't. I'm going to go watch Ratsar.
Oh, it's so good. You're gonna love it.
Okay. I can't wait. I really can't wait, because I love that idea of like, oh, when you watched it, you saw it then. I love stuff like that, like getting ahead of the curve. So um, I can't wait to watch. I'll give you my thoughts, and we will talk soon. I'll be in touch about your book.
Great, great. Thank you, and enjoy Paris and everything
Thank
else.
you. Thank you
Thanks so
so
much.
much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Femme and Furious. If you like this episode, share it out with your friends. If you know an aspiring comic who would really benefit from being in an incredible, supportive community like Lynn has created, then the link to join Gold Comedy is down below in the show notes. So just make sure that you copy that link and send it to them, and get them all hooked up. To give you a little rundown for how the rest of this month is going to go, every Tuesday through the 20th, we are talking about Stranger Things. I'm sure you've seen the finale, but I'm still going to go episode by episode to give these characters and this arc and this story the time and attention it deserves. So we will be doing the last 3 episodes: Escape from Camazotz, The Bridge, and The Right Side Up. All of that will be through the rest of this month. And then on the 27th, we are doing a mailbag. So start sending in your questions, start sending in your thoughts. Any thoughts about the end of Stranger Things, your thoughts about Heated Rivalry, which we just talked about. Give me your comedy sketches. We'll put them up on here and send them to Lynn. Whatever you would like, anything like that, just send it over. And next Friday, I will be doing The People We Meet on Vacation, a review of the movie. I already have the book content up. I will tag that in the show notes as well. So if you read the book and you just need a little refresher, I covered the book this summer on the podcast, and I will be covering the movie next Friday. So that's just a little taste of what's coming up on the podcast. I absolutely adore and love you guys. I will see you on Tuesday. We'll be talking about the escape from Camazotz. And until then, stay funny.